Salute to all the real ones out there. It's your boy Mike coming at you again with another video. If you like the direction that my channel was going, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share the video with anybody you think it could help. So today's topic is going to be about elevation requires separation. Now, in my life, I've been in situations where I've been away from my entire family for extended periods of time. And though it was tough to be alone and have to adapt to new surroundings, all in all, I realized that it made me a stronger person who used that period of seclusion and or isolation to develop in many ways that I probably wouldn't have been able to if I was still back in my home setting surrounded by people who don't have, let's say, an internal drive to rise to another level within their consciousness. Take, for example, when I went off to the Army. This is a beautiful time in my life because I was only 21, and the reason why I decided to join the Army at this time was because I saw my life kind of going in a cycle. So if you guys see my other videos, you know that I moved out at 18, but I never really elaborated on what happened from the time that I was 18 to 21 when I joined the Army. So keeping it all the way real with y'all, I had a roommate. We lived together and we were both kind of the same person in many ways. We were both the oldest children and we had responsibilities to our younger siblings. And at the time that he and I decided to move into our place, it was at a breaking point where in my household I was arguing back and forth with my mom because we just weren't seeing eye to eye. And you know how it is as a teenager. You have your way of thinking and then maybe your parents have their way of thinking, and you just don't feel like you can come to a compromise, right? But out of respect for my mother, I understood that her authority reigned supreme. And if I didn't agree with the rules that she was trying to set down or the restrictions that she was trying to place on me out of her concern and love for me to raise me a certain way, then it was up to me to actually change my circumstances. So she and I were pretty much arguing because I wasn't following her rules about what time I should be home and things I was supposed to be doing, right? And I decided to move out. But in that same time, I had a best friend of mine who was also with his parents going through similar battles, but they were also in the process of going through a divorce. So every day he was hearing the fussing and the fighting going on in the house, and he was really just tired of being around that negative energy. So I reached out to him and we decided to move into our first place, and that's what we did. And during that time, like I said in my other videos, I got a level of independence that I never would have had if I would have just, let's say, gone off to school. It was totally different knowing that he and I were responsible for bills, and we also had to, let's say, be on the same page with one another in order to avoid conflict. So after that period of living in that apartment, it was maybe like a year and a half, he decided he wanted to go do his thing, and I didn't want to pay the rent by myself or find another roommate. I'm pretty clean and organized, and he was as well, and I knew the likelihood of me bringing in one of my friends to actually live with would have probably caused a lot of strain on our relationship like it did with my previous roommate. So I went back to my mother's place. And around this time is when, I sold my first car and I got like a little old school Camaro. Then I sold that. Then I got another old school Camaro. And I started hanging around kind of with the wrong people. I was working in Ruby Tuesdays as a waiter. And when I would get off, I was, kind of running with the wrong crowd. And at one point, all that came crashing down. I stopped hanging with those people and I was back home with my mom and I wasn't working. And I had a little bit of money saved from the little bullshit I was doing back then. But it kind of dawned on me that if I wanted a different life, I was going to have to take a different approach. So I wound up joining the Army. And by doing so, I took myself away from my friends, family, and my my entire network and had to start fresh. Now, during this time, I realized I'm a person who excels when I'm actually on my own and I'm facing, let's say, a steep challenge. So the steep challenge was being in the army, surrounded by a whole bunch of different personalities, people that had various ways that they grew up. This is the first time that I was actually lumped together with people that literally were from all over the United States, and we all had one common goal, which was to make it through training. And this was the first time I really handled a weapon. The first time that I was, forced to work in a team of that magnitude. And the first time I was actually just doing a lot of masculine, cool stuff, like throwing grenades and going out to the field and learning how to utilize a knife correctly and doing combatives in a controlled environment. So we're fighting each other and we're learning like grappling techniques and first time setting up a tent in the woods and setting a fire and basically living in the extreme elements. I was in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and on any given day you could have temperatures that are ranging from maybe 90 degrees, and next thing you know it's raining, and then after that it's cold, and then in the morning it's like foggy but hot. So you had all different type of temperatures and extremes, and by going through that, it like cultivated a sense of masculinity within me and gave me a feeling that I could kind of conquer whatever came at me in regular life. So just being in the army as a whole, those were experiences where I basically grew as a person. But my biggest leaps in spirituality, physical strength, and mental clarity came from when I was deployed. So I deployed to Iraq twice. The first time was in Talil, Iraq. The second time was in Al-Assad. And both times, by just being away from everything and having to purge myself of my, let's say, bad habits due to the fact that none of that stuff is available, I grew as a person. So what do I mean when I talk about bad habits? I mean, like when I was stationed in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So shout out to anybody who's airborne that's listening to this video. But you know how it is at Fort Bragg. I mean, it's a nice duty station. It's a cool base. It's very huge. There's a big military community that lives within that area. And you're in close proximity to a lot of popping stuff. On any given weekend, you could shoot down to Atlanta. It was only a 5.5, 6 hour drive. You have Virginia Beach right to the north. Going back to Ohio to go visit family, I could hop in my car and it took me about 8.5, 9 hours. Driving through West Virginia, and you got Myrtle Beach was what, about 2.5, 3 hours away. Then you have all the spots in North Carolina that you could hit up. You could go hit up Raleigh real quick, enjoy a nice time out. You could go up to Charlotte, and hang out. And then not to mention that Fort Bragg itself had a decent little community in Fayetteville where you can go out, get it popping, and pretty much enjoy the perks of a big city, but not so much, And of course, as soldiers, we would drink, and basically just get thrown every single weekend trying to escape, let's say, the stress of being every single day on the move in the army. And those were fun times, but it was cool being deployed because when you in Iraq, it's just you in the desert. You got a lot of time to think about things, and it puts everything into perspective. And that's when I usually grew the most as a person. And when I would come back, I would have a newfound appreciation for everything that I left behind before I deployed. Something as simple as fresh grass and seeing, tall trees and nature and things of that sort brought you a really cool feeling, and I had my major epiphanies about my life when I was deployed or shortly after returning. So what I've noticed even now, I'm here in Kuwait, I'm on quarantine, I'm not able to go to work right now, so due to this whole corona stuff, they're taking a lot of precautions to make sure that everybody is safe before they return back to shift. So this has given me a lot of time to really sit back and think, and that's also one of the reasons why I started this YouTube channel. It's literally been in my mind to do this for like the last maybe 3 to 4 years. And I'm just now getting around to it just because I have ample time and there's no one distracting me. There's no emotional ups and downs of, let's say, hanging out with people or arguing with a wife. So I'm over here and I'm able to actually collect my thoughts and put it together. And I hope that at any moment it touches just, if it just touches one person, I'm happy. You know, I don't really care for a large following. If anybody knows anything about numerology, I'm a number 9. And I'm a person who honestly does my best work when it's behind the scenes. Like when people don't really notice what I'm doing, but it still has an impact. That's like my ideal situation, is to be kind of somebody who's manipulating things from behind public view. So as I sit here, it just made me think about the fact that elevation requires separation, because every single time I'm by myself and there's no one really to distract me and I'm focused and I'm left to my own devices, that's when I usually make the biggest leaps in growth. You know, I read the most books. I get structured and go back to like my teenage years when I was very focused and I had a journal and I would every day write an entry of things that I learned, things that I'm aspiring to accomplish, as well as challenges or issues that I'm facing at the moment. And by doing that, it kind of was a form of therapy, because I could effectively counsel myself just by reading over the things that I wrote about. And it was like my subconscious got a moment to marinate on whatever's bothering me by me writing it out. And then later on, I would automatically have some type of answer, and it comes from within. So during this time, Corona, I bet a lot of you are feeling like bored, or you're looking for something to entertain yourself, which is totally normal. We all go through periods where reality just feels like it sucks. I'm right there with y'all. I'm no stranger to that feeling. But what I would challenge you to do is to really sit back and think about, what do you want out of life? What are some goals that you have, some things that you've been putting off for the longest, but on your inside that it would be beneficial to you. I challenge you to figure those things out and start attacking them now. An example back to this YouTube shit. All right, what if it takes me 10 years to get a decent following? I don't care, because for me, it's something that I know is part of my purpose. I'm supposed to be somebody who can mentor young men like myself who grew up in a situation where they really thirsted. They were really thirsty for some type of mentorship, And since I didn't really get that, I had to mentor myself. So now it's my turn to give back based on everything I learned. And hopefully this touches somebody and they can actually start to follow my channel and grow from it and honestly come out in a better position. So elevation sometimes requires separation. Just keep that in mind, because we've all been around people who we felt are draining our energy, or people who are non-supportive of your big goals that you have. You ever sat down with a friend and you start explaining something simple like, man, I want to get into investing, and then the first thing that comes out of their mouth is something negative, like, oh, well, that shit is risky. And now it got you thinking different, like, dang, yeah, he probably right, it is risky, I really don't have an idea. No, don't kick it with people like this, man. All they would do is drain your energy, and I find that a lot of people are threatened when they see that you are excited about taking on self-improvement. There's a theory that's going around that I remember even talking about it when I was at the university. And I forget exactly how it goes, don't quote me, but it was something like A managers, the letter A, those are the ones who are go-getters, high performers, and they usually shake up the status quo. And these are the people who wind up moving up high into their position. And what happens is they hire B managers. B managers being that they're not as good as the A, but they're still productive, right? And the reason why the A hires the B is because he or she wants to ensure job security. Basically, you don't want to hire someone that's better than you. Then what happens with B managers is they hire C managers. And by the time you get to C managers, when they move up to the position of the, let's say, the A or the B, who are now gone, that's usually when you need a restructuring of your company, because C managers will try to hire D managers. So basically, it just goes down, and before you know it, you have a company culture that sucks and the morale is low. You see? So this is just something to keep in mind, like when it comes down to life and goals and anything that you want to achieve, you have that inner voice that's always with you telling you what you need to do. And sometimes it's better for you to separate yourself from the crowd and establish what you want to do, get a strong bond with yourself and go after it, than it is to stay in the crowd and just be another number. So with that being said, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll be back at y'all with another video very soon. Take it easy.